Mr. Clean gets rid of dirt and grime and grease in just a minute.
Mr. Clean will clean your whole house and everything that's in it.
Floors, doors, walls, halls, white sidewall tires, and old golf balls.
Sinks, stoves, bathtubs he'll do. He'll even help clean laundry too.
Mr. Clean gets rid of dirt and grime and grease in just a minute.
Mr. Clean will clean your whole house and everything that's in it. Can he clean a kitchen sink?
Quicker than a wink.
Can he clean a window sash?
Faster than a flash.
Can he clean a dirty mirror?
He'll make it bright and clearer.
Can he clean a diamond ring?
Mr. Clean cleans anything. Mr. Clean gets rid of dirt and grime and grease and...
Don't mess with my product! When it comes to clean, there is only one mister.
A revolution, one might call it, the phone of the year, others might say, the newest kids on the block. We have all waited months in anticipation for this moment, and not only do we get one, we get two. I present to you the iPhone 6 and the iPhone 6 Plus. Not only did Apple create the slimmest iPhone ever, it also has many awesome features. With 1.5 macron pixels, the iPhone 6 now has the perfect resolution to any selfie. Whoops, maybe not that kind of selfie. So whether you pick the iPhone 6 or the iPhone 6 Plus, just remember to choose wisely. Hello? Yeah, I know, I was just about to send you that pic.
A Wonka bar.
Hold your breath. Make a wish. Count to 3.
Come with me, and you'll be in a world of pure imagination. Make a look, and
Willy
you'll
Wonka,
see
this
things
place is
beyond
amazing. Everything here is practically edible.
Yes, it's every child's dream to live in a candy-filled wonderland. But I must warn you, if you eat too much of that, you'll turn into a giant blueberry.
But this isn't a blueberry Wonka bar. Do you have those?
Of course not. That's a pretty good idea, though.
I don't understand what the big deal is, Mr. Wonka. Why don't you have some?
I've had my fill, thank you.
Oh, well, more for me then.
No, stop. Don't do it. Kids these days don't know when enough is enough. Candy is good every once in a while, but if you eat it all the time, well...
Mr. Wonka, I don't feel so good. Oh God.
Need I say more? Obesity is already at an all-time high. Talk to your kids about eating right before it's too late. For more information, visit www.obesityaction.org.
Hi, my name is Michael Vick. Most of you know me as a professional football player. Lately, I've been in the news for my involvement in dogfighting. Obviously, I can't take that back, but I can share with you what I've learned. Animal cruelty has shown me that animals have feelings too. Pets are loyal, and they will always be there for you, even when you're at your worst. This type of behavior reflects the owner. We have an obligation to listen and see what our animals are trying to communicate. Just like I'm dependent on my linemen, animals are dependent on us. Now that wasn't a pleasant sight. That is the most common result of animal cruelty, which leads to nothing but lives lost. If I can learn from my mistakes, so can you. To support this cause, please check us out on our Facebook page or log into www.humanesociety.org for more information. Thank you.
Hello, and thank you for joining us tonight. I'm Sean Winslow.
And I'm Chanel Scott. Tonight on CSI On Air, Sean and I will be talking with a very special guest, media scholar and professor at the College of Staten Island, Dr. Jillian Baez. Her most recent work is entitled Two Sides of the Same Story, Media Narratives of Latinos in a Subprime Mortgage Crisis. This has generated a conversation surrounding race and class here in the U.S.
A graduate from Hunter College and PhD recipient from the University of Illinois at Urbana-Champaign, Dr. Baez's works have been successfully published in the Journal of Popular Communication, the Women's Studies Quarterly, and the Critical Studies of Media Communication, just to name a few. Dr. Baez, thank you for sitting down with us tonight.
Thank you. It's a pleasure to be here.
Okay, I just wanted to start the conversation with, how did you stumble upon this topic?
Sure. I stumbled upon this topic through watching the news during the recession in late 2008. And of course, one of the headliners was about the subprime mortgage crisis and the housing crisis in general. And what I began to notice was that certainly the subprime mortgage crisis was affecting many people in the U.S., but I noticed that some news outlets were focusing on African Americans and Latinos as not only victims of the subprime mortgage crisis, but also talking about them as irresponsible homeowners. I initially thought that this was just a hunch and began talking about this with my co-author, my colleague Mari Castañeda. And so we decided to actually do some research to figure out if this was just random news stories we were seeing or if this was actually a pattern.
What do you think fuels the bias in mainstream English media? Can you talk about the lack of positive Latino representation in the print media and how this perpetuates racism?
What I think fuels a lot of these kinds of representations is two things in terms of how news is produced. One, there are very few minorities still within journalism, both as reporters and also as editors, who, as we know, have much more power in terms of determining what kinds of stories are told and the kinds of angles they're told through. The other issue is that Latinos are rarely used as news sources, whether as expert sources or as ordinary people, just expressing their particular opinions or viewpoints. So those are two of the major issues, I think, that affect how Latinos are misrepresented in mainstream media. And certainly what also perpetuates this is, some of our unconscious ideas about race and ethnicity, right, that we often don't talk about, but nonetheless, they're sort of taken granted assumptions that we reproduce.
That's true. Since the subprime mortgage crisis, have steps been put into place to prevent this unbalanced number of foreclosures?
This is an issue that the government continues to work on and that economists continue to debate, and I certainly am not an economist, so I won't discuss the specifics of sort of fiscal policies that are being put in place. But certainly the banks are not as savvy in terms of giving out mortgages. The other thing that we're seeing is brokers are much more careful about the kinds of mortgages that they're giving to potential buyers and explaining some of that fine print. And certainly one of the big changes that we've seen as well is that potential homeowners are much more careful about securing mortgages that are not, that they actually can pay for in the long term.
Right. So, liberal and conservative media often talk about the same topic from different perspectives. Why didn't you discuss independent media? They usually offer alternative vantage points. Why did you generalize it?
Sure. Well, the study, just to be clear, the study looks at mainstream English language media, and we were really looking at major news outlets, primarily because those are the most heavily consumed, meaning that most of the general public, that's what they're consuming. And then we were comparing that to Spanish language media to get a sense of like, well, how is the ethnic press covering this same topic? I will say that though this was not the focus of our study, primarily because we knew this was going to be an article form and there are limitations in terms of space and time and resources. But independent news, for example, I'm thinking of, we looked at some of the coverage in Democracy Now!, for example, and it was much more nuanced actually than both the mainstream and Spanish language press. So it is an important source. It just was for the scope of our study, it was not something that we focused on.
Okay.
Now let's hear from our correspondent John Rizzo, who is live in Port Richmond, Staten Island with Miguel Rodriguez after he had to foreclose his dream home. John?
Thanks, Sean. I am here with Miguel Rodriguez, joined by his wife, Josefina, and they are both residents of Staten Island, New York. Both of them have recently just lost their family home during the mortgage crisis of 2008. Miguel, looking back, what do you think exactly went wrong during this process?
I think it really comes down to the fact that we were taken advantage of. I didn't understand the paperwork, and I fully trusted the broker I worked with. But he saw an opportunity to make money, and he used us.
I'm so sorry for your such unfortunate circumstances. Josephine, I see you're completely distraught over this development tonight. What exactly can you tell us? What words do you have for us tonight?
I have two young sons, Juan and Pablo, and they deserve a roof over their head like everyone else. We should not be discriminated against because we are Latino. This is not fair.
I totally empathize with your situation. I hate to burden you both with another question this evening, but I have to ask, when did you both realize that you were going to lose your home?
All the bills started piling up, and I knew I couldn't afford them. Then the bank started calling, and I knew it was getting really, really bad.
One final question with you guys tonight. What would you like the public to know about your situation during the recession? Can you tell us a little bit more about your personal experience with your mortgage broker during this whole process?
You know, it happened to a lot of people. I was lucky that I still had my job, and it's good to know that people recognized that we were taking advantage of and used.
I am very sorry for your unfortunate circumstances this evening, but I would like to thank you both, Miguel and Josefina, for joining us tonight under these, again, unfortunate circumstances. And there you have it. Words firsthand from a couple of Latino mortgage crisis victims. Live in the Port Richmond section of Staten Island tonight, John Rizzo reporting for On Air CSI. Back to you, Sean, in the studio.
Thanks, John. After the break, we'll talk with Professor Baez about the racial narratives used by the English language print media and possible solutions for future objective reporting.
Hey again, it's Carrie Underwood here. Fall is upon us, and it's the most perfect time to whip up some healthy meals. Now I'm not the most amazing chef, although I am a whiz at the microwave. But today, with the help of my nutritionist, I'm cooking up some veggie soup. It's super tasty. She makes cooking healthy and easy with quick and simple recipes. I promise, guys, if I can master them, anyone can. And don't forget to talk to your trainer. He'll get your body into shape like no other. And remember, this season, get your loved ones together. Try our veggie soup recipe for your next holiday. And when you're on the go, drink it with vitamin water.
Vitamin water is a perfect complement to veggie soup. Drink it today. Vitamin water. Water and vitamins is all you need.
No. 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 Yes. Damn it. How is this possible? My fantasy team's supposed to be unstoppable this year. They're destroying me. Luck is just on my side today.
Welcome to the Rachel Maddow Show. We begin tonight with a very distinguished guest, Justice Samuel Alito. Welcome to the show, Justice Alito. Tonight we're here to discuss a very controversial decision by the Supreme Court. Apparently we're allowing our bosses into our bedrooms again. Is that correct?
That is indeed correct, Rachel, and the problem here lies in protecting the religious rights of business owners.
The Supreme Court has decided to rule in favor of corporations to decide on a woman's reproductive health care. What is available to them as part of their coverage from their employer. Do I understand correctly?
Yes, and Rachel, you know, nothing is black and white. The argument here is much more complex than that.
Doesn't seem so complicated to me, Judge. Let's settle this on another court.
Whatever you're suggesting, Rachel.
Space Jam, here's your chance, do your dance at the Space Jam. All right.
Attitude from the basketball court to the Supreme Court. Tell your government that your health care is your own business.
Hi, I'm Bart Simpson.
And I'm Nelson Mons. Over 3.2 million students are victims of bullying each year.
About 160,000 teens skip school every day because of bullying.
If you witness bullying or if you are being bullied, please call the following number, 1-800-273-8255.
Please do us a favor and leave the bullying to the tunes. Welcome back to CSI On Air. We are here with Dr. Jillian Baez, who was just about to tell us about how media representations of Hispanic Americans have become racially biased in the news media's framing of the mortgage crisis. Dr. Baez? You talk about three narratives constructed by English language news media. These include the Latino threat, the colorblind discourse, and the blaming of Latino real estate professionals. Can you tell us more about these three narratives?
Sure. The first narrative we found was this Latino threat narrative. And here we're really drawing from anthropologist Leo Chavez's work, where he notes that there is a very large discourse within U.S. society that frames Latinos as a threat, right? And a lot of this is very much seeing Latinos as immigrants, as sort of the perpetual foreigner, and certainly is very much grounded in xenophobia, right? Fear of the other, fear of immigrants in particular. And it was interesting because when we did our work, many of the journalists were just reporting on statistics. So they were saying, for example, that Latinos and African Americans were some of the most heavily affected by the subprime mortgage crisis. What was interesting, though, is that some of their sources and also some of the commenters on these news stories would then interpret those statistics in terms of seeing Latinos as quote-unquote illegal immigrants. So, for example, they would begin to talk about how Latinos don't deserve home ownership because they are not citizens, which is not necessarily the case. And this wasn't something necessarily that journalists were talking about, but this is how sources and readers were interpreting that data. The second narrative, which is related to this, is a colorblind discourse. So what we mean by this is what we began to see was that even though reporters were noting that Latinos were heavily affected by the subprime mortgage crisis, especially in terms of foreclosures and losing their homes, their readers, in terms of when we looked at their comments, did not want to see the mortgage crisis framed in terms of race and ethnicity. So for example, many commenters would say this is not about race and ethnicity. So many people have been affected by the subprime mortgage crisis, even though the numbers were actually saying that more African Americans and Latinos were affected. So that's what we're talking about by this colorblind discourse. And lastly, there was a blame on Latino real estate brokers, who certainly we can argue played a role in the subprime mortgage crisis in terms of encouraging homeowners to take out subprime mortgage loans and perhaps not explaining some of the fine print and the implications of these mortgages. But part of this focus of the blame on the real estate brokers takes away from the larger issue of the banks and the larger financial industries that enabled these mortgages to be taken out by so many people.
What are the steps that can be taken by English media to break away from these racially biased narratives?
Sure, there are a number of things that the industry can do. Certainly one of those is as I mentioned earlier, we do need more Latinos within the newsroom as reporters, as editors. We also need more Latinos as sources for news stories. And I think that we also need to train journalists very early on, for example, at the undergraduate level, about these kinds of issues of like diversity and difference. Oftentimes this is not part of the curriculum, or perhaps students might take one course and it's sort of seen as not central to their training. But it is very important given that we live in a multicultural society.
We are now going to go live to Masha Wickramasinghe in New Dorp, Staten Island, who is about to speak with a mortgage broker as to offer the brokerage perspective. Masha?
Thanks, Sean. Good evening. I'm here with mortgage broker John Smith, who was working with Miguel and Josefina Rodriguez during the 2008 recession. And he helped Miguel purchase his home. Mr. Smith, do you think what you did was wrong?
Well, Masha, the fault here lies with the client. It's not my job to teach this person how to read. They come to me looking for a house, and I give them a home.
During the 2008 business year, what was the percentage of foreclosures?
I can't comment on that question. I don't have the data in front of me, but from what I can recall, it was a great year. And right now it's the holiday season, so I'm looking forward to vacationing down the Keys with my family.
Well, the Rodriguezes are picking up the pieces of their life after losing their home. Don't you feel responsible?
I don't know who that is.
Thanks, Mr. Smith. Live in Lower Manhattan, Masha Wickramasinghe reporting for CSI On Air. We will be right back after the short commercial break.
I should know they are no good for me. 'Cause you're hot, then you're cold, you're yes, then you're no, you're in, then you're out, you're up, then you're down, you're wrong when it's right, it's black and it's white, we fight, we break.
Singing and performing on stage is a lot of fun. But doing the moves I do on stage really strains my back. The Icy Hot Patch and Cream works wonders as the iciness soothes the pain down and the hot makes it go all away. It really helps with my day and lets me sing the songs you hear today, pain-free. It really works.
'Cause you're hot, then you're cold, you're yes, then you're no, you're in, then you're out, you're up, then
Blood sucking makes my breath smell horrible.
Hey, I have a solution for that.
Tell me your secret or else I'll kill you.
Okay, chill. Here you go.
Listerine. It kills bad breath, but not vampires.
It's no secret that our world is facing a serious energy problem. With many turning to eco-friendly renewable energy resources like solar or wind energy, we're starting a new cycle of repair and regrowth for our environment. But right here in the US, we're facing an increasing problem. Did you know that there are over 500,000 active gas wells in the US? Did you know that oil and gas companies have desperately been trying to harvest this gas right here in your own backyard? Through hydraulic fracking, a process in which fluid is injected into the ground to break up shale rock to release natural gas, oil and gas companies have been harvesting energy sources at an alarming rate. But at what cost? Imagine drinking this every day, having it come out of your own kitchen faucet, shower, or sink. The fluid used at these fracking sites are laced with chemicals. 40,000 gallons of chemicals, many of which are known to cause cancer and are even flammable. And over 50% of these chemicals are left in the ground all while entering your water supply. With over 1,000 documented cases of water contamination in the cities and towns around fracking sites, the environment, our water, and our health are at risk. Since when is your drinking water unsafe? And is it a price you're willing to pay for something that causes more pain than help? Become part of the movement to help stop fracking and help take back our water. To learn more, visit cleanwateraction.org. Let's be the solution. Let's bring clean water back.
Hi, my name is Lindsay Lohan. This was my life only a few years ago. Nothing but drinking, smoking, and drugs. Most of you know me as a child star. Though I had my share of fame, life wasn't always as glamorous as it seemed. This is me back in 2007, when I got my first DUI. My alcohol addiction is where it started it all. It was a gateway to my cocaine abuse that turned my life upside down and, as you can see, changed my appearance. My career flopped and I was in and out of rehab. After years, I'm finally clean. If you or someone you know is abusing drugs or alcohol, call 1-800-DRUG-FREE or log on to drugfreeworld.org and start a path to a new life. And remember, live above the influence.
We are back with Dr. Jillian Baez on CSI On Air, and we are just about to close out the show.
We just want to thank Dr. Baez again for taking the time to sit down and discuss her work with us. We have time for just one more question for our guest, Dr. Jillian Baez, a professor of the Media Culture Department at the College of Staten Island. Professor Baez, by 2060, the U.S. population for Latinos is estimated to be 157 million. How do you think this will affect race relations?
We are already seeing some of these demographic changes. So for example, even before 2060, so even for 2020, they're already projecting that we're going to become a minority-majority nation. So those numbers are definitely going to shift a number of things, particularly in terms of politics and certainly in terms of media. So for example, we are already seeing with Latinos that they are being vied as an audience more and more by media, mainstream media in particular. And the other thing that we're seeing too is that politicians more and more are looking for the quote-unquote Latino vote. So that has already sort of shifted some of the dynamics in which Latinos are no longer completely underrepresented. I think the issue is more now about misrepresentation and moving more towards more dynamic representations of Latinos in both news media, as we've talked about today, and also in terms of entertainment media. I also do want to emphasize that much of this population is a young population. It is the Latinos are the largest demographic within youth. So they are definitely going to be the leaders of the next generation. So I think that will shift in terms of how we think about race and ethnicity, and certainly in terms of race relations throughout the nation.
Do you have any other up-and-coming works you are working on that you would like to share with the audience?
Sure. My main project right now is a book manuscript on Latino audiences. Certainly, you know, the marketing industries have collected quite a bit of data on Latinos, but the issue with this data is that one, it's proprietary, meaning that it is private data that these companies own. And the other issue is that much of the data is more quantitative, okay? So that they are collecting more numbers, statistical data, looking for these kinds of patterns. The project that I look at is ethnographic and intergenerational. So it tries to capture, what is it that Latinos are consuming in terms of media in both mainstream and Spanish language media. What context are they consuming that in, and how do they make sense of that? And I'm particularly interested in questions of how does media allow them to think about issues of belonging, right? So do they see themselves as belonging within the nation? And in terms of citizenship, not just in terms of legal citizenship, but in terms of like cultural and social citizenship. Again, these issues of belonging, and also how they contribute to the nation and how they see this vis-a-vis media representations.
Well, that's all the time we have for tonight. We want to thank Dr. Jillian Byers again for coming on the show to speak about such an important economic topic.
Please be sure to check out Dr. Baez's article called Two Sides of the Same Story, Media Narratives of Latinos and Subprime Mortgage Crisis. And we would like to remind the audience that future episodes of this program will be coming your way.
That's right, Sean. CSI On Air was produced as part of the Advanced TV Studio course at the College of Staten Island, under the guidance of Professor Tara Maddock. Thank you all for joining us. I am Chanel Scott.
And I'm Sean Winslow. Thank you very much for watching, and happy holidays. Have a great night.